The knife was 3 inches from Kira Bennett's throat when her hand moved. She twisted, grabbed the attacker's wrist, and in one brutal motion, shattered the bone against the marble pillar. The assassin's scream echoed through Busan's most exclusive charity gala as 400 guests froze in horror. Blood dotted her emerald gown. Her husband, Jin-Woo Park, Busan's most feared crime lord, stood across the ballroom, champagne glass arrested halfway to his lips. For 3 years, he'd believed his American wife was a convenient decoration. The stranger watching her break a trained killer's arm in 2.4 seconds realized he didn't know his wife at all. And the dark, possessive hunger that roared through him in that moment changed everything. Welcome to Afrohan Tales, besties. Please like, share, and subscribe for more amazing stories like this. The attacker crumpled, and Kira released him with surgical precision. She straightened slowly, emerald silk torn at the thigh, diamond choker glittering at her throat, and surveyed the silent ballroom with the calm of someone who'd seen far worse than hired killers at charity galas. Her eyes found Jin-Woo across the crowd, and something electric passed between them. Recognition, challenge, the shattering of 3 years of careful pretense. Then Marcus Song stepped forward, Busan's second most powerful crime lord, the man who'd sent the assassin. His expensive suit couldn't hide the rage twisting his handsome face. He'd orchestrated this attack to humiliate Jin-Woo, to prove the modernized Beko syndicate was weak. Instead, Jin-Woo's supposedly helpless American trophy wife had just broken his hired killer's arm, like it was nothing. Impressive, Marcus said in English, loud enough for everyone to hear. But violence from a woman is still just desperation. He reached for Kira's waist with proprietary confidence, fingers sliding possessively over her hip. Let me explain how things work in Korea, sweetheart. Women stand behind their men, quiet and... Kira moved faster than thought. She caught his wrist mid-grope, applied pressure to the exact nerve cluster that would maximize pain, and dropped Marcus Song to his knees in front of Busan's entire criminal elite. His shocked gasp was the only sound in the cavernous ballroom. When she spoke, it was in flawless Korean, accent perfect, each word a blade. Touching without permission has consequences in any culture. Consider this your education in consent. She increased pressure until Marcus's face went white. And for the record, I stand beside my husband, not behind him. She released him with contempt, and Marcus scrambled backward, cradling his wrist. The room erupted. Shocked whispers, nervous laughter, the unmistakable sound of power shifting. Kira smoothed her torn gown with bloodied knuckles and walked toward the balcony, every eye tracking her movement. Jin-Woo Park stood frozen, his entire world reorganizing around one shattering truth. The woman he'd married 3 years ago for convenience, the quiet American who never spoke Korean, never involved herself in his business, never demanded anything beyond the protection their arrangement provided, didn't exist. She'd been a fiction, a mask, and the woman behind that mask had just publicly humiliated his greatest rival while speaking Korean he'd never heard her utter once in 3 years. Something dark and possessive uncoiled in his chest, something that recognized her as his equal, his match, his. The civilized control Jin-Woo had maintained since taking over the Beko syndicate cracked, and beneath it was pure, consuming want. Min-jun, his second in command, appeared at his elbow. "Sir, should we?" "Follow her," Jin-Woo ordered, already moving. "Make sure she gets home safely, and find out everything about what just happened." He paused, glass still in hand, champagne untouched. "Everything about my wife." Later that night, Jin-Woo found Kira in their penthouse, 42 floors above Busan's glittering skyline. She'd showered, changed into simple black silk pajamas that somehow emphasized every devastating curve of her body. Her natural hair was loose in thick curls he'd never seen unbound, and she stood barefoot before the floor-to-ceiling windows like she owned the city spread below. She didn't turn when he entered, but her spine straightened. "If you're here to be angry, save it. I'm not apologizing." "How long?" Jinwoo crossed to the bar, poured 2 whiskeys with hands steadier than he felt. "How long have you spoken Korean?" Now she turned, and the impact of her full attention hit him like a physical force. Even after 3 years of careful distance, she was breathtaking. Deep brown skin luminous in the city lights, curves that had haunted the edges of his awareness despite every effort to ignore them, and eyes that held lifetimes of secrets he'd never thought to ask about. "Since the day after our wedding," she answered in Korean, perfect and unashamed. The admission stole his breath. Jinwoo crossed to her slowly, offered the whiskey. Their fingers brushed as she took it, and electricity sparked between them. Immediate, undeniable, 3 years overdue. 3 years, he repeated quietly. "You learned Korean, and you never said a word. You married me for appearances." Kira sipped the whiskey, gaze never leaving his. "I was your plausible deniability, the foreign wife who couldn't possibly understand your business. Why would I ruin a perfectly useful arrangement by revealing I understood every word spoken around me? Smart. Ruthlessly, brilliantly smart." Jinwoo studied her with new eyes, seeing the intelligence he'd deliberately overlooked, the tactical awareness in how she positioned herself near the exit, the faint scars on her knuckles that spoke of training far beyond one lucky confrontation. "Why break Marcus's wrist?" he asked. "Why reveal yourself now?" "Because he put his hands on me without permission." Steel entered her voice. "Because he assumed I was property to be tested, a weakness to exploit. And because your organization needed to see that you chose a wife who won't be disrespected, even if you chose her for entirely practical reasons." The words hit different than she probably intended. "You were protecting my reputation. I was protecting both of us." She met his gaze without flinching. "You've modernized the Beko Syndicate, shifted focus from violence to information brokerage. Your council views that as weakness. Marcus returned from Los Angeles specifically to challenge you, and he's been testing boundaries for months. Tonight he crossed a line, and I made sure he understood the cost." Jinwoo absorbed this, his tactical mind racing through implications. "You've been watching, learning the players, the power structures. For 2 years, a ghost of a smile. Habit from my previous life." "What previous life?" Kira took a longer drink, and for the first time, vulnerability flickered across her face. "I was a tactical instructor for the U.S. Army, specialized in close-quarters combat and strategic planning. I trained special operations units in counter-surveillance, hand-to-hand combat, and logistical warfare." She paused. "Until I reported my commanding officer for sexual assault. His father was a senator. They destroyed my career, had me dishonorably discharged, and made me unemployable in the United States. Then the threat started. Accidents waiting to happen to women who make accusations against powerful men." Rage, cold and absolute, flooded Jinwoo's veins. Someone had hurt her, destroyed her, driven her into a marriage of convenience with a stranger in a foreign country, because staying meant death. "Give me his name," he said quietly, and the violence in his tone made her eyes widen. "No." Her refusal was gentle, but unyielding. "That's my past. I'm asking about our future." She set down her glass with deliberate care. "Do we keep pretending to be strangers who share an address? Or do we become something real?" The question hung between them, 3 years of careful distance suddenly unbearable. Jinwoo moved closer, slowly enough that she could retreat. She didn't. He stopped when he could feel her warmth, see gold flecks in her dark eyes, smell vanilla and something uniquely her. "I assumed you wanted distance," he admitted, voice rough. "I told myself it was respect for our arrangement. Really, I was afraid of wanting something you'd never give." Kira's laugh was bitter and beautiful. "I've been afraid for 3 years. I'm exhausted from it." "Then let's stop being afraid." Jinwoo raised his hand slowly, giving her every chance to refuse. "May I touch you?" The question, seeking permission, offering control, made her eyes shine. She leaned into his palm, and Jinwoo cradled her face like she was made of precious things. Her skin was silk warm against his hand, and the small sound she made when his thumb brushed her cheekbone went straight through him. "Tomorrow Marcus will retaliate," he murmured. "Tonight, tell me everything. Your training, what you've observed, the players and power structures. If we're doing this, we're partners. Equal." Kira's smile was sunrise brilliant. "Partners? If you're loving this twisted tale of secrets and marriage, hit that subscribe button right now. Drop a comment telling me what you think Kira's next move should be. Trust me, you won't want to miss what happens next." The following morning, Jinwoo woke to find his wife in his kitchen for the first time in 3 years, making coffee in black leggings and an oversized t-shirt that somehow made her look more devastating than the emerald gown. No makeup, hair wild and free. She looked younger than her 29 years, but her eyes held ancient knowledge. "We need to establish a pattern," Kira said without preamble, sliding coffee across the marble island. "Marcus will be watching, waiting to see if last night was luck or skill. I want him to think it was luck." Jinwoo accepted the coffee, studying her tactical mind at work. "What kind of pattern?" "Starting today, I go to Cafe Magnolia every morning at 10. Same table, same order, absorbed in romance novels and fashion magazines. Visible, routine, apparently harmless." Her smile was sharp. "While they watch me and report back that I'm no threat, I'll be watching them. Identifying his surveillance network, documenting patterns, finding vulnerabilities. Brilliant." Jinwoo felt pride and terror in equal measure. "You'll be exposed." "I'll be visible. There's a difference." She leaned against the counter, all dangerous, curves and tactical precision. "I'm a combat trainer, Jinwoo. I know how to be seen without being vulnerable. Marcus won't just watch. He'll escalate. I'm counting on it." Something dark flickered in her eyes. "Desperate men make mistakes. I'll give him enough rope to hang himself, then we'll pull it tight." By the end of the first week, Kira had identified Marcus's entire surveillance network. She presented her findings to Jinwoo and his inner circle in the Becho Syndicate's underground conference room, and Minjun's skepticism died within the first 5 minutes of her tactical briefing. She'd created a comprehensive analysis, complete with photographs, vehicle descriptions, shift patterns, and communication frequencies. 3 rotating watchers, 1 corrupt police detective feeding information, and reports filed every 48 hours like clockwork. "Marcus is hemorrhaging money," Kira concluded, spreading financial documents across the table. "He's lost his Chinese suppliers. They pulled contracts last month after someone offered better terms." She glanced meaningfully at Jinwoo. 3 of his lieutenants defected in the past 2 weeks after evidence of his embezzlement surfaced, and his timeline suggests desperation. He's planning something for the Harbor Moon Festival in 10 days. Minjun leaned forward, former resistance replaced by grudging respect. "How do you know the timeline?" "Because I've been tracking his supply orders, surveillance intensity, and personnel movements." Kira pulled up another document. "He's bringing in outside contractors, expensive ones. The kind you hire when your regular people won't do what you're asking. That suggests violence he knows his own men would refuse." An assassination attempt, Jinwoo said quietly. During the fireworks, maximum chaos and noise cover. Kira nodded. He'll come for you specifically, probably with hired killers since he can't trust his own organization anymore. She paused, eyes on Jinwoo. And he'll use me as leverage if he can. In his mind, I'm your weakness. The room went cold. Every man there understood what happened to weaknesses in their world. Jinwoo's expression didn't change, but his voice dropped to something lethal. Then we make sure he never gets close enough to try. No. Kira's contradiction shocked the room. We let him try. We feed false intelligence through the corrupt detective, make him think you'll be vulnerable at a specific location during the festival. Then we end him when he shows his hand. Absolutely not, Jinwoo said flatly. You're not bait. I'm your partner. Kira held his gaze, unyielding. And I'm telling you, this is the cleanest way to eliminate a threat without starting a war that will cost lives. Your lives. She gestured to the men around the table. Mark has brought this fight to us. Let's finish it strategically. The argument continued for an hour, but eventually Jinwoo agreed to a modified version of her plan, mostly because she was right, and he'd promised partnership. But the thought of Kira in danger made his chest tight with something too intense to name. That evening, alone in the penthouse, Jinwoo found Kira on the balcony, city lights reflected in her dark eyes. He joined her silently, and for a long moment, they just stood together, shoulders almost touching. I'm not used to this, he admitted quietly. Caring whether someone lives or dies beyond tactical necessity. Kira turned to face him fully. And I'm not used to someone caring if I do. We're both learning. I don't want you hurt. The confession cost him. The thought of Marcus or anyone else putting hands on you makes me want to burn this city down. Jinwoo. She touched his face gently. I spent 3 years invisible in this marriage because I thought safety meant hiding. But hiding isn't living. And I'd rather stand beside you in danger than spend another day pretending to be someone I'm not. He pulled her against him, one hand tangling in her wild curls, the other splayed possessively across her lower back. You're going to destroy my control. Good. She rose on her toes, lips a breath from his. I like you better without it. The kiss started as a question and became a claiming. Jinwoo kissed her like he'd wanted to for 3 years, deep and demanding and desperate. Kira met him with equal hunger, her nails digging into his shoulders, a small sound of need escaping her throat. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Jinwoo rested his forehead against hers. After we handle Marcus, he said roughly, we're making this marriage real in every way. No more separate bedrooms. No more pretending. Kira's smile was pure promise. I'm counting on it. The next 3 days passed, in a blur of strategy and growing intimacy. They worked side by side, planning every detail of the Harbor Moon Festival trap. And at night, they talked, really talked, sharing pieces of themselves they'd hidden for years. Jinwoo told her about inheriting the Beko Syndicate at 25, after his father was murdered in a power play, about modernizing operations against council wishes, about choosing information over violence because he'd seen what bloodshed cost. Kira shared more about her military career, the assault that destroyed it, the months of running before she found her way to an immigration attorney who knew someone who needed a convenient foreign wife. I thought I was trading one cage for another, she admitted one night, curled against his side on the couch. I didn't realize you were giving me keys to a kingdom. I just had to be brave enough to use them. Jinwoo kissed her temple, breathing in vanilla and contentment. You've been brave since the day I met you. I was just too blind to see it. But the peace couldn't last. On the 8th day, everything changed. Kira was returning from a dress, fitting with Jinwoo's sister Hana, when the parking garage went dark. Her combat instincts screamed danger half a second before 4 men materialized from the shadows. Professional, military-grade tactical gear. These weren't Marcus's usual thugs. "Marcus sends his regards," the leader said in Korean, accent suggesting Eastern European training. "He wants you to understand the consequences of disrespect." Kira dropped her shopping bags and kicked off her heels in one fluid motion, mind already calculating odds. 4 trained operatives in a confined space, and they'd cut the lights to limit her visibility. Smart. "Then let's make sure he gets my reply." The first attacker went for his sidearm. Kira closed the distance before he could draw, executed a joint lock that sent the weapon clattering across concrete, and used his momentum to drive him skull first into a concrete pillar. He dropped like a stone. The second rushed her from behind. She sensed him more than saw him, drove her elbow back into his solar plexus, then stomped down hard on his instep. When he doubled over, she grabbed his head and introduced his face to her rising knee. Down. The third was smarter, circling wide, pulling a knife. The fourth had a retractable baton and the confidence of someone who'd used it before. They came at her together, coordinated, and Kira's training kicked into overdrive. She feinted left, grabbed the third man's knife hand as he committed to the strike, and used his own momentum to redirect the blade into the fourth man's thigh. The fourth screamed and went down. The third, realizing his mistake, tried to retreat, but Kira was already inside his guard. She struck his throat with controlled force, enough to incapacitate, not kill, and he collapsed, choking and defenseless. 47 seconds, from start to finish. 4 trained killers neutralized. Kira collected her bags and heels, stepped over groaning bodies, and her hands were shaking when she called Jinwoo. "I'm fine," she said before he could ask, voice steadier than she felt. "But we need to accelerate the timeline. Marcus just sent military contractors." Jinwoo met her at the penthouse elevator, and the terror in his eyes when he saw the shallow knife cut on her forearm broke something open inside her. He pulled her against him with trembling hands, checking her for injuries with frantic thoroughness. "You're bleeding," he said hoarsely. "Barely." But she let him guide her to the bathroom, let him clean, and bandage the wound with shaking fingers. The careful tenderness undid her more than the violence had. "If they'd killed you," his voice cracked. "Kira, if I'd lost you." She framed his face with both hands, making him look at her. "But you didn't. I'm here. I'm safe. Can handle myself." "I know." He pulled her closer, desperate and careful all at once. "But knowing doesn't stop the fear. I love you." The confession tore out of him, raw and inevitable. "I don't know when it happened, somewhere between the gala and this moment. But I'm in love with you. And if something happens to you tomorrow at that festival..." Kira kissed him silent, pouring 3 years of loneliness and longing into it. "I've loved you for 6 months, she whispered against his mouth. "I was just waiting for you to catch up." Something broke in Jinwoo's careful control. He kissed her back with devastating thoroughness, lifting her onto the bathroom counter, hands mapping her curves like he was memorizing every inch. "Tell me to stop," he breathed, between kisses trailing down her throat. "Don't you dare." Kira wrapped her legs around his waist, pulling him impossibly closer. "Don't you dare stop." He carried her to his bedroom, their bedroom now, and the world narrowed to just them. He loved her with reverent hunger, murmuring Korean endearments against her skin, learning every sound she made, every place that made her gasp his name. And when they finally came together, it felt like coming home, like every broken piece finding its perfect match. Afterward, wrapped in sheets and each other, Kira traced patterns on his chest and felt safer than she had in years. Jinwoo held her like she was precious, fingers tangled in her hair, and she could feel his heartbeat gradually slowing against her cheek. "I love you," he murmured into the darkness. "Every version of you. The soldier, the strategist, the woman who broke Marcus's wrist, and my carefully maintained distance all in one night." Kira smiled against his skin. "I love you." The crime lord, with a soft heart, hidden beneath all that control. But peace never lasted long in their world. Kira woke at dawn to find Jinwoo already dressed, watching her with an expression that made her chest tight. His phone was buzzing insistently on the nightstand. "Marcus's people are moving early," he said quietly. "There's been activity near the festival grounds. I need to coordinate with Minjun." He kissed her forehead and left, and Kira felt the old fear creeping back. She'd been vulnerable. She'd given herself completely. And now he was pulling away, called back to his world of violence and strategy where she was a liability, a distraction. No. She forced herself to breathe, to remember his words, his touch, the way he'd held her like she was everything. But fear didn't listen to logic. Fear remembered every time intimacy had led to abandonment, every time trust had been weaponized. By the time Jinwoo returned an hour later, Kira had locked herself in the guest room, terror and old trauma convincing her that last night was temporary, that reality would destroy what they'd built in the dark. He knocked, gently. "Kira, let me in." "We should stay focused on Marcus," she called through the door, hating how her voice shook. "Last night was... We got caught up in the moment. The danger, the adrenaline. We should keep things professional until... Open this door." Jinwoo's voice was gentle but unyielding. "Please." Silence. Then the sound of him sliding down to sit against the door. "I'm not leaving this hallway," he said quietly. "And I'm not letting you run from what we started. From us. You don't understand. I understand you've been hurt. Betrayed. That every time you've been vulnerable, someone used it against you." His voice carried through the wood, steady and certain. "But I'm not them. I chose you 3 years ago without knowing who you really were, and it was still the best decision I ever made. Now that I know, now that I've seen your brilliance, your courage, your capacity to love despite everything that's tried to break you, I'm choosing you every single day for the rest of my life." Kira pressed her palm against the door, tears streaming down her face. "What if I can't be what you need? You already are, exactly as you are." A pause. "I had to leave this morning because Marcus's people were moving. Not because I regretted last night. Never because of that. You're not a distraction, Kira. You're the reason I want to make sure we both survive what's coming. So please, open the door." She did. He was there immediately, pulling her into his arms, and Kira finally let herself believe this was real. That he wasn't leaving. That she was allowed to have this. "Don't go anywhere. The Harbor Moon Festival is about to begin, and Marcus is about to learn why you should never underestimate a MAFIA boss's wife. Like this video and comment your predictions. Subscribe so you don't miss the explosive finale. The Harbor Moon Festival transformed Busan Harbor into something from a dream. Thousands of lanterns floated on water that reflected the lights of the city, and the air smelled of street food and anticipation. Kira wore the custom emerald hanbok Jinwoo had commissioned months ago, gold embroidery catching the glow of candles and stars. He wore traditional formal wear, and together they looked like what they were, royalty in a kingdom of shadows. Whispers followed them through the festival crowds, but the tone had shifted from pity to respect. "She speaks perfect Korean." Broke Marcus Song's wrist at the charity gala. Jinwoo Park chose better than anyone knew. Kira felt Jinwoo's pride in how his hand never left her waist, how he introduced her to business contacts, not as decoration, but as his partner. Min Jun and 15 Baeko operatives positioned themselves strategically throughout the festival, invisible to civilians, but clearly marked for anyone who knew how to look. At exactly 9 o'clock, as the first fireworks exploded, overhead, Marcus Song appeared with 8 men at his back. His wrist was still bandaged from the gala, and rage had carved new lines into his handsome face. He'd lost everything in the past 10 days. Money, men, reputation, and desperation made him reckless. Jinwoo, Mrs. Park. His smile was venomous. Enjoying the festival? Immensely. Jinwoo's tone was pleasant, but Kira felt the coiled tension in his frame. Though I suspect you didn't come for the lanterns. I came to correct a mistake. Marcus's eyes fixed on Kira with ugly intent. Your American whore embarrassed me. Publicly. That requires a response. Jinwoo moved to step forward, but Kira's hand on his chest stopped him. She walked toward Marcus with slow, deliberate steps, every inch a queen approaching a beggar who'd forgotten his place. I'm not his weakness, Marcus, she said softly, each word carrying despite the fireworks. I'm his advantage. You just never understood the difference. You're a woman playing in a man's world, Marcus spat. And you're a man who lost 5.8 million won, 3 lieutenants, your Chinese suppliers, and your entire organization to this woman. Kira's smile was razor sharp. How does it feel, knowing I orchestrated your complete destruction? Realization dawned on Marcus's face. Shock giving way to humiliation, giving way to murderous rage. His hand went to the knife at his belt, and everything happened at once. Marcus lunged with the knife aimed at Kira's throat. She sidestepped with practiced ease, caught his wrist mid-thrust, and the world slowed. She could feel his pulse racing beneath her fingers, see the exact moment he understood he'd made a fatal miscalculation. She applied pressure to the radial nerve cluster, and his grip spasmed. The knife clattered to the dock, but Marcus was bigger, heavier, and desperation made him dangerous. He threw his body weight at her, trying to overwhelm her with brute force. They grappled near the dock's edge, dark water churning below them, and Kira's training became instinct. She used his momentum against him, redirecting his charge. Her foot hooked behind his knee, just as her shoulder drove into his chest. Physics did the rest. Marcus's arms windmilled as he lost balance, and Kira's final controlled push sent him stumbling backward into 2 of his own men. All 3 went down in a tangle of limbs. Before they could recover, police sirens wailed. Officers flooded the dock. Clean cops Jinwoo had contacted hours earlier, with comprehensive evidence of Marcus's crimes. Evidence Kira had meticulously documented over 10 days of surveillance. Marcus was arrested for attempted murder, assault, embezzlement, and conspiracy. His organization collapsed within hours. Lieutenants surrendering, accounts frozen, operations dismantled. The Rose Clan ceased to exist before midnight. As police led Marcus away in handcuffs, he locked eyes with Kira one final time. You destroyed me, he said, and it sounded like disbelief. No, Kira corrected gently. You destroyed yourself the moment you mistook patience for weakness and strategy for decoration. I just documented it. When the police cars finally disappeared, Jinwoo pulled Kira into his arms and kissed her thoroughly in front of everyone. His men, rival organizations, curious festival goers. No more hiding. No more pretending. His wife, his partner, his equal, for all the world to see. You're magnificent, he breathed against her lips. We're magnificent, she corrected, and Jinwoo laughed, the sound rich with relief and joy and promise. 3 months later, Kira stood in the same ballroom where everything had changed, but she was a different woman now. Not different at her core. She'd always been strong, tactical, brilliant. But now she owned it. No more masks, no more hiding. She wore crimson silk tonight, Jinwoo's family diamond choker glittering at her throat, a symbol of acceptance into the Park family, into his world. Min-jun approached with a rare smile, bowing respectfully. "Mrs. Park, your analysis on the port expansion was brilliant. The council approved it unanimously." "Thank you, Min-jun." Kira returned his bow with natural grace. "I'll have the full implementation brief ready by Tuesday." Across the room, Hana was introducing Kira to her fiancé, and the conversation flowed easily in Korean and English. Business contacts sought Kira's opinion on territorial disputes and trade negotiations. She'd become what she'd pretended to be 3 years ago, Jinwoo Park's wife, but on her own terms, with her own power. Jinwoo watched from a distance, champagne forgotten in his hand, unable to look away. His wife commanded respect from men twice her age, negotiated in flawless Mandarin with Chinese suppliers she'd personally recruited, and moved through his world like she'd been born to it. "You're staring," Hana said, appearing at his elbow with a knowing grin. "I'm appreciating." He finally tore his gaze away. "There's a difference. You're also terrified she'll disappear if you blink." Hana's tone gentled. "She's not going anywhere, Jinwoo. She chose you. She stays choosing you." As if summoned by his thoughts, Kira's eyes found his across the crowded ballroom. Her smile was private, intimate, full of promises for later. Jinwoo crossed to her immediately, unable to maintain even professional distance. "Dance with me," he murmured, already pulling her toward the floor. They moved together, like they'd been doing this for decades, instead of months. Kira fit against him perfectly, her head tucked under his chin, their hearts beating in sync. Other couples gave them space, and Jinwoo realized they'd become the power couple everyone whispered about. "I have something to tell you," Kira said softly against his chest. His arms tightened instinctively. "Good or bad?" "Good, I think." She pulled back just enough to meet his eyes, nervous and glowing. "I'm pregnant." The world stopped. Jinwoo stared at her, processing, and then joy, pure and incandescent, flooded every cell in his body. "You're certain?" Confirmed this morning. Her hand found his over her still flat stomach. "Are you happy?" "Happy?" He laughed, spinning her in a circle that made her squeal with delight. "Kira, you've given me everything. A real marriage, a true partnership, and now a family. I'm not happy. I'm complete." He kissed her there on the dance floor, not caring who watched, pouring every ounce of love and gratitude into it. When he finally released her, both breathless and grinning, he dropped to one knee. The ballroom went absolutely silent. "Kira Bennett," Jinwoo said, pulling a velvet box from his pocket. "We've done everything. Backwards. We married for convenience, fell in love in the middle, and now we're having a baby. But I want to do this part right." He opened the box, revealing an emerald surrounded by diamonds, the exact shade of the dress she'd worn the night she'd shattered his world and rebuilt it into something better. "Marry me again, for real this time. Not for citizenship or protection, but because I love you. Because you're my partner, my equal, my queen. Because I want to spend every single day proving you made the right choice when you chose me back. So please, will you marry me?" Kira was crying, laughing, nodding all at once. "Yes, yes, 1,000 times, yes." He slid the ring onto her finger, beside her original wedding band, and the ballroom erupted in applause. But Jinwoo only had eyes for his wife, his real wife now, in every way that mattered, and the future they were building together. 6 months later, Kira walked down the aisle in traditional Korean hanbok, hand embroidered with gold phoenixes rising from emerald silk. Their first wedding had been a sterile civil ceremony in an immigration attorney's office. This one was a celebration. Hana cried through the entire ceremony. Min-jun stood as Jin-woo's best man, openly approving of the woman who'd transformed their organization with strategic brilliance. And when the officiant pronounced them husband and wife, Jin-woo kissed Kira with such tenderness that even hardened syndicate members looked away, granting them privacy in the crowded room. "I love you," he whispered against her lips. "Every version of you. The soldier, the strategist, the mother of my child, my queen." "I love you," she returned, the crime lord with the soft heart. "My partner, my home." The reception lasted until dawn, but eventually they escaped to the penthouse that had been their prison and became their sanctuary. Jin-woo carried her across the threshold again, and Kira laughed at the absurdity and perfection of it all. 1 year after that, Kira stood on their balcony in the early morning light, cradling their daughter against her chest. Na-young had Jin-woo's dark eyes and her mother's rich skin tone and wild curls, perfect and tiny and completely adored. She made small sleeping sounds, and Kira's heart felt too full for her chest. Strong arms wrapped around them both from behind. Jin-woo rested his chin on Kira's shoulder, one hand gentle on their daughter's head, surrounding both his girls with warmth and protection. "What are you thinking about?" he asked softly. "How far we've come." Kira leaned into his solid warmth. 4 years ago, I was running for my life, convinced I'd never be safe again. Now I have a family, a purpose, a home. You gave me all of that." "We gave each other everything," Jin-woo corrected gently. "You taught me that strength isn't about standing alone. It's about choosing the right person to stand with. You taught me that love doesn't make you weak. It makes you willing to burn down the world to protect what matters." Below them, Busan glittered with infinite possibility, the city waking to another day. Above them, the sky lightened from black to navy, to the first hints of rose and gold, and between them, their daughter slept peacefully, proof that love could conquer trauma, danger, and fear. Kira had come to Korea as a fugitive, with nothing but survival instinct and a fake smile. She'd become a wife out of necessity, playing a role she thought would keep her safe. But somewhere between the arrangement and now, she'd become herself. Fully, unapologetically, powerfully. The soldier, the strategist, the partner, the mother, the queen. The marriage that began as escape had become an empire's greatest strength. She'd stopped running and started building. She'd found exactly where she belonged, beside the man who'd given her not just safety, but a kingdom to rule together and a love that would last lifetimes. Na-young stirred in her arms, making the small sounds that meant she'd wake soon wanting breakfast and attention. Jin-woo kissed Kira's temple, then their daughter's head, and the simple domesticity of the moment felt more precious than all the power and strategy in the world. "Ready to face another day?" Jin-woo asked with a smile in his voice. Kira looked at their reflection in the window. 3 people instead of 2 lonely individuals, a family instead of an arrangement. "With you, always." Thank you for joining Kira and Jin-woo's journey from strangers to soulmates. If this story made you feel something, please like this video, share it with friends who love powerful romance, and subscribe to Afrohan Tales for more passionate love stories every single week. Drop a comment telling us your favorite moment. We read everyone, and your support means the world. What story should we tell next? A billionaire and his assistant? Prosecutor and a witness? A professor and his student? Tell us in the comments. Until next time, besties, Keep believing in love that conquers